Hi, everybody. Welcome to your favorite podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about the Avs because that's just all they deserve. And then a ton of Broncos talk with a special guest. So hang around and we will be right back.
Yo, welcome to the show. Let me set the scene. Mile High Sports Symposium, living the dream. Broncos in the house with that orange and blue. Nuggets making moves, watch that altitude crew. Avalanche bringing ice, check the skills they display. Rocky swinging bats, ready for on gameplay. Rapids in the mix, kicking it with style. Buffs bring the heat, put the rivals on trial. Chris and JT, they got the scoop. Feel now high vibes, feel that energy rise. Sports on the menu, watch the crowd mesmerize. From football to hockey, we're taking it higher. Join the celebration, feel that sports desire.
And we are back. Before we get into a ton of sports, I want to say hi to my co-host, Chris Whitwright. You can find him over on the Twitter at MHSS _HardH. First and foremost, how are you, brother?
I'm good, man. Kids are out of school, so they may or may not be joining the show today. We'll have to find out.
I was just thinking that a minute ago, and
right.
I can hear, which I guess is good as long as there's noises. It's like the silence that you get worried about. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. We might have more than one special guest. Before we get to our special guest, let's make sure you all know to go and follow the podcast and the network. So we're on Orange and Blue Network. You can find us on the YouTube, Twitter, the Facebook, and whatever that thing might be. But definitely please go take an opportunity to follow, subscribe, comment for the algorithms, all those good things. And then sometimes you might need some caffeine in your life, anything like me, who aforementioned 4 kids get tired, or pre-workout, whatever it might be, get you some Dubby. Jitterless energy blend. You can use our promo code OBN10 to save 10% off your order at checkout. Get all of the good stuff, none of the bad stuff. If you can't pronounce it, don't drink it. That's my motto, one of them. And then if you like foosball, baby, we got plenty of it. We got Bronco Bros to Viva Los Broncos, English, Spanish, morning, afternoon, late, whatever you might be. We got sports on tap for you. Definitely go check out the network. And we are back, you know why? Because we're awesome. Yep. Let's before we get into the meat and the joy of what we have today, let's talk about the thing that kind of sucks. So we're pretty pumped this time last week, I think.
Yep.
Or at least, felt pretty good about things. Wow, how the turntables have turned. The Colorado Avalanche are eliminated last night, losing to the Vegas Golden Knights, Game 4, 2-1. The President's Trophy winners again fall short.
Get dumped early.
Get dumped early. Anything you want to? We'll do a deep dive next week. We'll do a little postmortem. But yeah. Is there anything that you feel like you got to get off your chest?
Yeah, I mean, it's still fresh in our consciousness, so I don't want to speculate too much on this. But yeah, I think they're going to have to take a hard look in the mirror. Jared Bednar has said as much that they're going to have to reflect. Credit to the Knights for coming out and and beating us like a drum. But we're gonna have to reflect on kind of what happened and why things went so awry in this series. So
yeah, it's I can understand a game getting away from you. Maybe I understand 2, but I don't know how 4 get away from you. Especially 2 that you controlled pretty significantly. And even yesterday's game, I mean, they led in most categories, just not put puck in net. Apparently, you don't win that way. So, this one hurts a little bit. I haven't tried to like internally quantify how big this letdown is when it comes to kind of Colorado sports. We'll probably jump into that next week. But you know what we're gonna do is we're gonna wait till next week for that because we want to have fun. Summer just started. Memorial Day weekend was great. I was telling you, I got out, played some softball, and took my kids to the pool twice. Good stuff. So we're gonna talk about the Denver Broncos. Why are you gonna talk about the Denver Broncos, guys? Because it's May. Yep, it's our show, and we get to do what we want.
Right.
And even though it stings, we have a special guest. So we have Thomas Hall from Broncos Untold, who does a fantastic job of teaching us a little something about the team that we love, and sometimes things that maybe we were aware of but didn't know, or some things that we just plain didn't know. So first and foremost, Thomas, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while since I've been on a live podcast.
Well, we're glad that you're here with us because we've known each other for a really long time, and sometimes we get tired of each other. And so having someone of your caliber break us up is great. No, we're excited. Even though the season time wasn't, I was like, I dig what you're doing, and I love your perspective on things. And to be honest, it's kind of like, so what you do, and I'll let you get into it. So with Broncos Untold, some of the things that I really enjoy about it really is like this enjoyment of fandom, right? Not, quarterback controversy. You got Drew Lock guys versus whatever. Yeah, like all the things that make kind of sports suck. It's just things that are really cool and stuff to celebrate or to learn more, and some of the depth behind the things that you really appreciated for your team, from the 60s to now. There's been a lot of Broncos history, and getting back to kind of the nostalgia piece, which I think our generation digs, Ninja Turtles and all the things. It's nice sometimes just like, oh yeah, you know what? That time was great. Broncos with the fantastic uniforms, Shanahan and like all that. See, it just makes me warm inside. So I just appreciate it and all the positive fandoms. Maybe give us a little bit about your projects, the Broncos Untold, kind of what you're doing. And then the one question I didn't get to ask you that I wanted to save till now is like, why? I mean, I love it, but what happened that you got motivated to say, you know what, I think this is something I really enjoy doing, and I want to share it with Broncos country?
Sure. Well, and just now, if I start glitching and I'm telling you there's something wrong with my computer, just let me know. I can switch over to my phone. So if it gets annoying, tell me. But the reason, so I've been a fan forever. I can remember football a little bit in the late 70s. And, I have vivid memories from 83 on where I can look back and go, yeah, I remember watching this stuff. So I have a lot of knowledge of Broncos, and I've loved them my whole life. So I started out writing out for Mile High Huddle for a long time, doing several different podcasts, and I was there for 8 years. And I got in. I do analytics, so I got in. I tried to start a business, football analytics, and so basically what happened, that didn't work out. I lost a lot of passion for everything, and just kind of like said, you know what, I just kind of want to step away. I was tired of the bickering about the current events and everything. And so I never really lost my passion for the Broncos as far as the history and what I used to watch back in the day. So as I kind of like thought about it, like, you know what, I think maybe I can just come up with a History Channel one that is on my own schedule. I don't have to go live. I'll re-record these stories. But I thought I wanted to do it with a little bit of twist. So a lot of young people probably have no idea who Paul Harvey is, but I remember Paul Harvey. I loved the rest of the story. So I wanted to start these historical stories in a way that like flowed to the kind of the punchline or the reveal at the end. So, kind of builds up to, oh, who is that player that you keep talking about? Or what was this event that happened? And at the end, I can't do it the way Paul Harvey does. I mean, the guy was, on the radio for 50 years for a reason, but that's kind of how I wanted to see it. So I just started doing it and wrote a bunch of stories to talk about on air that are, 3 to 8 minutes long, and hope people enjoy them and learn something about the stories, but make them interesting too. Not just go, oh, the worst draft pick, Paxton Lynch, because, he was, lazy and want to play games. I mean, there's no story there. So, I want to find those that have stories. So, from me, I did one about Teddy Gregory. There's a very interesting story about that draft bust that I told. And so that's kind of what I'm doing. And that is where I started from, how I kind of came around to doing this podcast.
I love it. Well, I dropped the link for the YouTube page in the chat. And so I dig it. And I appreciate you helping out the younger kids, 3 to 8 minutes. It's probably a max of time that people can't pay attention anymore without something shiny going on. And so maybe we'll dive into some of the stuff that you got going on. Chris, I don't know if you want to, since there's a couple of things that you were super interested in and some special moments in Broncos history. I didn't know if you want to take the first.
Yeah, so one of my favorite Broncos Untold videos, and I was telling Thomas before we went live, is the Willie Brown story from the 60s. Now, Willie Brown is a Pro Football Hall of Famer, very famous Oakland Raider. If you've ever watched NFL films, he's the gentleman who's running downfield and the helmet is just kind of wriggling. So it's very, very iconic player there. But he was a Bronco to start his career. So, yeah. Thomas, can you talk a little bit about kind of what happened there and why he went from the Broncos to the Raiders?
Sure. Yeah, so the reason why I don't know what Lou Saban's reason actually was. I mean, what maybe wasn't a perfect fit or whatever, but Willie Brown was already a great player. I mean, he already had some AFL All-Pro status, AFL All-Star status. He was a ball hawk, already had several 15 interceptions in his first few years with the Broncos. And the reason why I call it the worst trade of all time isn't because they actually traded and gave away too much or whatever. It's the fact that they gave the missing piece to the Raiders. The Raiders were on the cusp of doing something great, and they needed that bump and run coverage that Willie Brown basically pioneered. So it wasn't so much that the Broncos lost a great player. They gave their heated rival, the biggest rival that we can point to through their history, this missing piece that jettisoned a 10-year dominance against Denver and against the league. I mean, they ended up going to Super Bowls, finally winning a Super Bowl. Willie Brown was key in that Super Bowl victory. So not just losing a player of that caliber, but giving it away to who they gave that player away to was the really kind of the twist of the knife that I hate about it.
Right. I think a lot of people would automatically point to the Russell Wilson trade as being the worst trade of all time. Yep. But yeah, Willie Brown, man, the problem was it's not the price that we pay, or it was not the price that we got back, but just that missing piece, and that propelled the Raiders to greatness in the 70s. So, and
on top of it, if you think about it, the Broncos have bounced back from that Russell Wilson trade fairly well. I mean, there was a couple tough years, but I mean, they were Super Bowl contenders, and without Bo Nix getting hurt, they probably would have went to the Super Bowl and possibly won against the Seahawks. The Broncos continued to be terrible until they didn't have a winning season until, almost the same year that the Raiders won that Super Bowl. So there's that history of hey, we gave away a great player and we are terrible for a long time after.
Yeah, it's still, I mean, Hall of Famer, right? It was,
Yeah.
Broncos didn't have a Hall of Famer yet, first ballot.
Yep.
You know, and it goes to show it took till Elway in what, 04, right?
Yep.
To get a Hall of Famer in, and he was first ballot in 84. And so don't want to date myself, but I was just alive when he got in. It is a huge moment. I think it goes to show sometimes, right? Like sometimes the best deals you make are the ones you don't. And that was a deal that, you know, for a 6-foot defensive tackle and a 3rd-round pick, and you know, in yesteryears, I don't think that the draft was necessarily as valued, right? There wasn't a currency system like we have right now with Jimmy Johnson's, chart and all those things. It was just, he was a good player already. It wasn't a guy was on the bench. We didn't know what we didn't have.
Yeah, he was an all-pro corner for us, and that's just it was. And again, we mentioned the coach Lou Saban was the architect of that deal, but he ended up dealing, another Hall of Famer in Curly Cup to the Chiefs because he thought he was a guard, and it turns out Curly Cup was a defensive tackle. So just kind of interesting.
Lou Saban, the coach that never met a star he wouldn't ship out, basically.
Yeah. You know what, not my guy. We're out of here.
Yeah, we have another coach, former coach that we'll talk about that had a similar forte. I did want to talk a little bit about Marlon Briscoe, and I know I have done a few things on him. So when I was covering the Broncos for Mile High Sports, I did write a little bit of a piece on Marlon Briscoe and what we maybe forget or don't give us credit for having the first starting black quarterback in NFL history. And, a guy that came from Omaha, Nebraska, where a large group of my family kind of staked claim in. And so strong connection there. But really embracing his style of football, it was kind of the pre-Cordell Stewart kind of slash style. And the Broncos kind of leaning in, mind you, not for too terribly long, but having an opportunity to really see that through some. Just in your research and your storytelling, any thoughts just about maybe the impact that had on the Broncos and how it paved the way for many quarterbacks to follow?
Well, I mean, obviously it was a historic moment, as you said, the first African-American quarterback to start. So there's that aspect. And it kind of came out of necessity. There were some injuries, so they promoted him to the starter. But the problem was the NFL and teams weren't really ready for that style of quarterback yet. Even though that was a historic moment, it did take quite a number of years before you saw that kind of, like you said, a dual kind of threat quarterback, because Marlon Briscoe went from Denver to Buffalo and became a wide receiver. So even though he started at quarterback, he then became a pretty darn good wide receiver career. I mean, if you look at what he did, he was actually a very good receiver for Buffalo. So unfortunately, it didn't usher in a new era of quarterback, unfortunately. But eventually that happened. So you can still point back to it and say that he was the first and in a historic moment. But it took, I'm trying to think. Randall Cunningham came about a decade and a half, 2 decades later. The first one I can remember that actually got a chance to start.
Yeah, you had Doug Williams, who had some opportunities for a bit, but Warren Moon, it really took, and it was guys that had to play that style, right? Warren Moon and Doug Williams were traditional guys, and even Fran Tarkenton, right? I don't think he was appreciated for the style that he played and being a guy that played outside the structure. I think you could probably tell in that time frame, it was, you got to do what coach says and run the things the way that I run it and all those kind of things. But being able to, he had the rookie record for touchdown passes in Denver until Bo Nix, right? I think he had more than John Elway. And so just kind of a cool thing considering all of the greatness and cool stories in Denver Broncos history. That's definitely one of those. Maybe let's go to the 70s a little bit. So I think that the time that ushered in Denver as a sports city, probably I would say, right? With you had the ABA going a little bit in the Nuggets, but not necessarily stake claim in sports until the Broncos really got on the national stage. Maybe give us a story or two about the Orange Crush defense, Red Miller, that you just found to be pretty intriguing, leading to kind of that era of Bronco football.
Well, I mean, the most intriguing thing is that they had never been to the playoffs before. They had only come off of a winning season only a couple years before that. But I think the most intriguing piece of that to me was Red Miller gets a credit. I mean, Joe Collier was the architect of that defense. That took them to the Super Bowl. Joe Collier gets all the credit. But Red Miller gets a lot of credit for that team. But if you look back, John Ralston built that team. John Ralston had set that team up for success, and he ended up leaving because they wanted to take away either his head coaching position or basically his GM position. They wanted to split that up. They gave him an opportunity to take one of those two, and he decided to not take either and left. I don't know why they really wanted to do that, but yeah, I find it intriguing that John Ralston gets very little credit for how he set that team up for that 77 run to the Super Bowl, because he was pretty good at finding talent.
How did Craig Morton kind of solidify that quarterbacking staff? I think that was part of a big key of them making that run.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the Broncos need someone to get them over the hump. So Charlie Johnson, he doesn't get enough credit either. He came in, taught the team how to win, was a good quarterback, had a really good season, but they really needed that next step. They needed someone who was experienced in the playoffs, who could get them through that playoffs. And Craig Morton was that. He spent time with the Dallas Cowboys, been to the playoffs several times, didn't get the ultimate goal of winning the Super Bowl, but they needed that experience, and that helped put them over the hump. Unfortunately, he was terrible in the Super Bowl. I mean, the whole offense was 8 turnovers, and there's no way you're coming back from 8 turnovers. So, yeah, but other than that, yeah, Craig Morton was a huge piece for that run. But you had so many good players. I mean, that people don't even think about outside the Orange Crust. Riley Odoms, excellent tight end, doesn't get enough credit. Probably should be in the Hall of Fame as Charlie Sanders is in the Hall of Fame. You got Rick Upchurch, who played out of his mind really for that game, with returns, a little bit of offense. And so it was, there were a couple key players in there that really kind of stood out, but unfortunately the turnovers just killed them.
Yeah, unfortunately, Craig Morton going up against his former team in the Super Bowl was just an unfortunate coincidence there. So
yeah, it was unfortunate. It was unfortunate they weren't ready to play offense. The defense held their own, but after that many giveaways, it's pretty tough to. It's surprising they held them to 27 points, even though that final touchdown, I think you look at it, probably really wasn't the touchdown.
Yeah.
Maybe let's
go ahead, please.
No, I was just gonna say let's usher into now the 80s. So because we're gonna do a little bit of games here in a bit. What are some of the things that you found that are maybe not well-known things, or some interesting just about Elway's arrival in Denver and how really it was a perfect opportunity taken at the right time. I mean, there's a lot of things within that story. If any of them go any different way, this era of Broncos football that really captivated the region doesn't happen.
Yep. Two things that got Elway to Denver. Two main things. The first and foremost, the beef between Pete Rozelle and Al Davis, because Al Davis had a trade in place for Elway, and Rozelle nixed it because there was bad blood between them, between the AFL days, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff we can get into. So that right there saved Elway from going to the Raiders. And then the second piece was Elway's baseball career, because you can thank Steinbrenner for offering him a contract that was big enough to actually have some weight to say, I'm going to go play baseball. As a $200,000 contract, which is not what obviously is going to get more as a first round pick, the number one overall pick, but it was big enough back then for him to carry some weight and say, I'm going to go play baseball. So they basically Colts that tied their hands. So they basically gave him away to the Broncos at that point for next to nothing. For the greatest prospect pretty much coming out of college, maybe in the entire history of NFL, at least quarterback, they gave away basically very little to get it. And in fact, Dan Reeves couldn't believe that's all they had to give away, because he made a comment about it. He's like, that's all we got to give for Elway, and the rest is history. But those two are the key pieces of how he ended up in Denver.
Yeah. Suck it, Al.
Well, you can't sue the league to try and move to LA and expect to get preferential treatment.
Just saying, yeah. For some reason, it's ask Chris Paul and anyway. That makes my heart happy. Got him. Wasn't that the last year they won the Super Bowl too? Was 83?
Yeah.
Yeah. Against the Washington Redskins. Yep. 84, 83, 84. Yep.
Sometimes it's just there's great things that occur and make you happy for the rest of your life. That's one of them. One thing I do really like, though, is you had a really cool piece about unsung hero in the development of John Elway. And I think football fans know the Fossil name. So Jim Fossil was offensive coordinator, quarterback coach for the Broncos, went on to have some opportunities, obviously all over the league. But really, if you really didn't latch on to that time and know much about the program or his relationship with John, what he really meant to John's development. And, it started off rocky. People think that Bo Nix, first 6 games were a little rough, which they were. John, that was bad. That was not good football, from lining up under a guard to plenty of turnover to getting a guy
who hasn't done that. Come on now.
That's true. That's true. I had something right. We're not gonna do that. But giving him the credit or at least shining some light on that, because I see it a little bit right now with Davis Webb and a lot of, I think, influence that he has with Bo Nix. You look at McCoy and Adam Gase with Peyton. You look at Gary with Plummer. You have to really be attached, right, to get the most out of a guy who is as physically gifted as, like you said, anyone that's ever played the game. John Elway was first round pick in baseball, and all the things. And so maybe talk a little bit about Fossil and maybe some cool things that we should know about his impact on John Elway.
Well, you got to kind of consider, first of all, John Elway had a big history with Fossil back at Stanford. So Fossil was his offensive coordinator in Stanford. So they had a history. But so then you fast forward, you get into the NFL, John Elway and Dan Reeves together. Unfortunately, Dan Reeves is a Hall of Fame coach. Don't get me wrong. a great coach, great eye for talent. He got way more out of lesser player talent than you can imagine. But his style, not just smash mouth, but he would protect a 3-point lead, for 3 quarters if he could, right? And he put that, his style put Elway in positions where he had to come up with something big. And Elway, on the other hand, his mental philosophy at the time was he had to win every down no matter what. So you put those two combinations in, you get somebody who is trying to force something to happen in situations where you should just basically, okay, live to play another series or live to play another down. But his mind was not, that didn't function that way. And so you put those two together, it made for a terrible statistical career for sure. Maybe he had some success in getting through to the playoffs and the Super Bowl and everything. And then you also have to consider the fact that from 83 to 89, the Broncos offense had, I think, a total of 5 Pro Bowlers. Two-time Sammy Winder went to the Pro Bowl, Bobby Humphrey, and then I think Keith Bishop went twice. So their offensive talent was just not there. So fast forward up to 1993. Wade Phillips becomes coach, brings in Jim Fossil. And Jim Fossil not only had that history, he helped Elway's mechanics too, but his main thing that he did was teach Elway that kind of patience. You don't have to win every down. If it's not there, if it's not right, you don't have to force it. Live to play another down or another series. Don't put yourself into a situation where you're throwing an interception, trying to force it in there. And that changed his mentality completely. And from that point on, he had the best, other than 87, he had the best seasons of his career when a quarterback should be fading, right? When a quarterback is older, he should be, especially back then, they get worse and worse. He had those, and they were good seasons. If you adjust for era, they were in the 80th percentile of all quarterback seasons during, so in history. So he had great seasons in his older years because of it. Also had to do West Coast, different offensive minds. Shanahan was a brilliant mind. So all those things coming together, but that was the catalyst, because in 1993, he had his best season of his career. And that was due to Jim Fossil changing that mentality, working with those mechanics a little bit, and then bringing in a better offense, all kind of in combination. But that the mental part was what was the key for Elway becoming a better quarterback.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. All right. You know what? I think that we should get to the what ifs, unless you want to jump to some other things. Chris, what are you feeling?
Yeah, I just have one more question for Thomas. Thomas, do you have a favorite moment in Broncos history? I want to get to that. So, is there
absolutely. My favorite moment is watching John Mobley knock down Brett Favre's 4th down pass, and I know that the Broncos are winning the Super Bowl. I mean, I was like suspecting that they might win this thing, but until it actually happened, that's my favorite moment of all time, because I've watched almost all the losses. I've never actually been able to live where it's only Broncos fans. I'm always living in places where there's some sort of rival fan or something. And you especially going through high school, you're watching your team get blown out. So having that moment is always going to stick with me as the best moment in Broncos history.
Where were you at?
I was sitting by myself, basically in a chair, because I didn't want anyone else around, because I didn't want to have to be there with anyone if they lost. So I was basically sitting by myself, and there were two people there that knew not to talk to me, but basically by myself.
Love it. Yeah, same. I was in my room on a TV about the size, smaller than my computer, with a chair in my room, door locked. That same thing. Like, nope, just I gotta this has to. If it doesn't, I'll be fine. Just leave me alone for a bit. But I remember that was. It was talk about monkey off the back feeling, right? And it's just because the state we had never. I had won more Pee Wee championships than I had ever seen professional. titles. Thank goodness, I guess, for CU having that run, or it was rough. And having a really good team often, one of the best players in the sport, and just not getting there. There was probably a phase a bit where it was. Now I'm going to take a shot, I guess. Kind of probably how like Buffalo Bill fans feel, where it was like, like this isn't awful. We're a good team. We make it to the playoffs most of the time. You got one of the best players to watch in the league. We just don't have it, or the excuses of, those 49er teams, but like those were just pre-salary cap. Those were behemoths. And, you just don't have the players, and like just being okay with being okay, and then watching your team and the route that they went was just, it's still epic. Get to the pinnacle and being like, oh, like you can do it. You can do it. Quarterback throws for like $126, and he's been the reason why you've been competitive for the last 15 years. And he throws for less yards than I did.
The players thought that too. If you listen to Mark Schleff talk about it, that he went back to his room. He didn't even party about it. It was like, to them, it was this huge weight off their back. They got it done. And then when they won in 98, they embraced it and they had more fun with it and everything. But even the players felt that weight that was on their backs, that they were just exhausted when it was done.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Well, thanks, Chris, because I actually teed us up to that era. Obviously, we had Peyton Manning, second most famous Manning of all the Mannings, probably even the second best quarterback of the Mannings, third now with Arch. Just
why is Eli better than Peyton? I don't understand.
In high school, he was stop it. I bet right now I can throw a ball farther than they can.
Okay. Well, anyway,
sorry, Peyton. And kind of ushering us now, maybe just give me your quick snapshot on this rendition. So we have Sean Payton and Bo Nix. We talked a little bit about the draft before we got on, and just how you're a good team and you draft to fill spots. It's not the sexiest thing, but that's a fun place to be at when you don't need your draft picks to come in and contribute right away, and you're able to secure top end talent like Jalen Waddle, et cetera. Maybe just with your context of yesteryears, how does this team, the excitement around it, the trajectory, kind of how does this fit in with Broncos lore? And do you think that this is a team that's kind of built in they can win it, a la the 90s Shanahan teams, or the 2010s version with Peyton Manning?
They're definitely Super Bowl contenders. Obviously, they probably, like I said earlier, they would probably gone to the Super Bowl had Bo Nix not got injured. So they're a Super Bowl contender. They didn't get worse. I think they got a little bit better. I don't want to jump into the draft picks and think that they're the savior until I see them play or anything, but looking over this roster, but what it reminds me of, if you think back, 1991, those Broncos were Super Bowl contenders. Mm-hmm. They had a really good defense. The Broncos this year they have a really good defense, not the defense that's going to be so dominant that you ride it to a Super Bowl victory like 2015 or anything like that, but good. And that's what the Broncos had a great pass rush. Same with this Broncos team. Two safety tandem that was impactful, just like this safety tandem. Had a quarterback back then, John Elway, who hadn't quite hit that, Jim Fossil stage. He was kind of slumping at the time, so he wasn't hitting his full potential, which I think Bo Nix hasn't quite hit his full potential. I think they've got a okay running back room, just like back then they had Gaston Green. They turned out a lot of yards, but it wasn't a dominant running back. So you think about these pieces, and on top of it, you had a head coach back then that could oftentimes kind of got in his own way. Dan Reeves, I talked about it, kind of got Sean Payton at times, I think, gets in his own way. So when I think about the Broncos today, it reminds me a lot of that 1991 team. Super Bowl contender, should have gone to the Super Bowl, David Treadwell missed, I talked about it, missed 3 field goals in the AFC Championship game. They lose by 3. Should have went to the Super Bowl. The Broncos last year should have went to the Super Bowl, but an injury cost them. So when I think back to that, I think there's 2 key pieces that kind of make the change. Back then, the Broncos wide receiver core was kind of mediocre. If Jalen Waddle is a free agent acquisition that pans out, like our trade that pans out, so offseason acquisition that would be a leg up versus what I would think about 91. And the offensive line, I think, is better. They had a good offensive line, an okay offensive line back in 91. I think this offensive line is better. It's more talented. I think those are the 2 key pieces where I would say that's going to make this season a little bit better than what happened in 1991, which I think could put them into the Super Bowl. So that's what when I look back, I don't know quick the roster. I think the roster, if I had to really think about it, the roster was like 1984, but the team makeup is like 1991. I think they've got it. I think they, I hated losing Jonathan Franklin Myers, but I think they're going to be okay with that. The 2 key pieces that they really have to figure out is, can they get a tight end that can actually do something? And are their inside linebackers going to have enough impact to make a positive change? I thought I like them. I think that they make a lot of tackles, but they don't have that impact. And that's where I see, did they find somebody that could step in any of those positions, or can Ingram make that next step? That's going to be a key factor at how far this team really goes.
Love it.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, love it. All right.
What ifs?
Little game of what ifs.
Okay.
With you, Thomas. So, what if Elway plays for the Colts? Never forces his trade to Denver. What happens with the Broncos then?
Gary Kubiak's the starter. He was actually penciled in to be the starter, and you would have a following of Gary Kubiak fans as a player instead of a coach. Whether or not they go to 3 Super Bowls or they win 2 Super Bowls later, they would have to make some sort of change. Dan Reeves just could not find a quarterback. He pulled in Tommy Maddox, thinking that was going to be it, ended up getting fired over it. He also looked at other, like Dan McGuire, a couple other quarterbacks that he was hot after. I don't know if he could find that quarterback that got them over the hump. So what you would see through that 80s era, you'd see Kubiak being the quarterback for a while, then a couple changes, and then Reeves probably let go at some point too. Someone else comes in and maybe builds a winner.
Yeah, I think the Dan Reeves era probably ends a little quicker than than it did, I should say. Chris Hinton, though, would be a Pro Bowler still.
Hey, you know what? Isn't his son in the league?
Yeah,
I think so. Anyway,
there's a lot of sons in the league that are making me feel old. So
yeah, for sure. Me too,
for sure. I think Gary. It's hard because yesteryear stats, right there. If you threw for more than 50% completion, you were a stud. Because every throw was 20 yards. So, no dink and dunk back in my day.
Right.
If we could undo it, I would want to see if Gary could do it. His smarts of being able to run the system. I think if you were able to get some Jim Fossil or some kind of West Coast style in here fast enough, I think Gary is so smart that he would have been able to do it. Maybe did he have the physical capability? Who knows? But it would have been fun to see him get at 1 year at least with the good team, instead of just guy never got to play, which he made a pretty good living 9 years not really ever having to play, and then you're nice to the coach, hires you in. Just kidding, Gary, you're the best. All right, what if the Broncos win any of the previous Super Bowls? They hold on to the 10-0 lead against Washington. They show quite a bit better. No, that 49ers game was not. Let's not do that.
Yeah,
they weren't winning that no matter what.
the Giants
against
the Giants one
team,
where they get stopped like 3 times at the within the 10-yard line. I think
with the 10-yard line.
Yep.
If they win that game, so we'll say that one because I think that one is there. What's the trajectory? I think some of what we held near and dear was the fact that we couldn't, right? And it's kind of all in for John. And, there was a lot of rallying around this team. I mean, even, I was born in 83 and it's just, you loved the team for that because it was your team and it wasn't a national following of that stuff. It wasn't a team that had perennial success. If they get that win, do you think it changes the trajectory of the franchise? Do you think they become a team that maybe continues to, they figured it out, they got it going, or, maybe they lose that edge, Elway leaves or goes a little bit earlier, it's a little easier to let him go, and he's, when maybe he has a tough year later on in his career. What do you think might have been changed or the vibe around Denver would have been different if they won one of those?
Well, I do have a what if story I'm going to tell about the New York Super Bowl game. Three mistakes cost the victory, and I'll go through that. I'll let you. I don't want to give it away, but they should have won that game. I'm telling you, they actually should have won it. I know that they got blown out in the second half, but if they win that game, I think they probably have it mentally that they can go in and beat the Washington Redskins next year. I'm not sure. Maybe not. Mike Harden got hurt in the playoffs, broke his forearm. He wasn't there. So I don't know if that changes anything. But so say they win that first one, and that's the only one that they win. Well, first of all, you've got Carl Mecklenburg. He's in the Hall of Fame right now. You've got Louis Wright in the Hall of Fame. You got Dan Reeves in the Hall of Fame. So you've got a kind of a different trajectory. Now, will John Elway stick around? Dan Reeves tried to trade him in 91, had a deal together with Washington to trade him, and it fell through. It wasn't on paper, but it fell through. So does Dan Reeves say, I know you won us that first one, but I'm still looking for a different quarterback that matches my style even better? I don't know. I don't think John Elway sticks around as long, but I still think they still, that one victory may not change. I think it changes the 97-98 scenario though. I think winning that first one doesn't get Mike Shanahan and Elway together to win those back-to-back championships.
How long do you think Reeves stays?
Sorry if I glitched there.
No, it's okay.
What's that?
How long do you think Reeves stays? If he's got that Super Bowl win in his pocket, does he stay for 95, 96?
Well, I think he makes it longer because I don't think with that Super Bowl victory, knowing John Elway helped him get it, I don't think he tries to move on as soon. So he doesn't draft Tommy Maddox, which is one of the reasons why he got fired, because Pat Bowlen chose John Elway over Tommy Maddox and Dan Reeves. So Dan Reeves probably stays 93, 94. The big key is, does he ever find the offensive line and the running back to run his smash mouth style that he really wanted to run? That's the key of how long he stays, because he never found it. The whole time he was there, he never got the true players for his system to really, really work. And so depending on how he gets through, those drafts and getting the running back and the offensive line, does he stick around longer? I'm not sure. I think it kind of ran its course. I mean, getting to the Super Bowl 3 times, that's a huge resume. I don't think that was the factor. I think other things later is what caused him to get fired.
Yeah.
He might make it another.
I appreciate
year,
that.
maybe.
No.
Yeah, or does he maybe lighten up on it? Things having to be his way because John got him a Super Bowl, and
it's
and maybe
possible.
that probable, but not probable. That's for sure, because it's interesting because the team in Atlanta, that was a pretty open, pretty open. You had Jamal Anderson, but they were a spread it around team. They threw it plenty. And so he kind of figured it out in the latter parts of the years, but yeah, I wonder.
Except for in the Super Bowl.
Except
Yep.
for the
If you would have just let Jamal Henderson run the ball instead of letting Tris Chandler throw it as much, they would have made a better game out of it for
It's
sure.
just, you finally had the running back in the offensive line, and then
Yep.
you're like, no, we'll have this journeyman throw the ball 38 times. All right. What if Terrell Davis doesn't blow his knee out?
Sadness. Pour one out.
Well, 1999 still happens the way it is. A story that I have to tell is coming out. It's coming out of training camp. We'll shed some light on it. 99 still happens similarly. They're probably a little bit better team, but they don't go back to back to back. But if he doesn't blow his knee out, I think you're looking at someone who is viewed as one of the greatest running backs of all time versus someone who was great in the playoffs and had a short career. So if he doesn't blow his knee out, you get that. But I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, what more? Yeah, he blew his knee out, but I'm not really into that what if, because he's at the pinnacle. Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowls, Super Bowl MVP, and he's the reason for that, and he's in the Hall of Fame. So I mean, I don't try to worry about that what if too much. You might get a little bit better feelings for Terrell Davis up in the top running backs, but you're not winning. You're not three-peating. Their best chance of three-peat was winning in 96.
Yep. Yeah, and even the 95 team that was 8-8. I mean, that was really I equated that 95 team was kind of like this Bo Nix team, the 10-7 team, where it was just didn't really know what to expect. You had the 2 mediocre years. Shanny comes, and it's just like fun football. It's creative. It's they're flawed, but it was fun. And then you knew, like, if they get a couple guys on defense, it'll be fun, and they did. The what if about that I really is because I think that Terrell Davis could have been the best running back ever play. And I'm a huge Barry Sanders fan and Walter Payton. Like, those two guys are on a different stratosphere for me because of how dominant TD was. Power, speed, like he was just it. Like I selfishly, if you just added 6 more years with what Shanahan was able to do in that scheme, he wasn't going to get 1,100 yards. He was going to get 14, 15, 1,600 yards. And he would have been stacking up yards at a rate that was it. I mean, talk about, right place, right time, right? And being a guy in a system that, if he's not there, he's not TD. The one that I'd like to chat about, because this one hurts still. And I don't know that there were any winners in this, to be honest with you. But Lou Saban wasn't the only coach that came to Denver and decided to trade away a bunch of good players. Josh McDaniels comes. First major deal that he makes is trading the Broncos' young stud quarterback, Jay Cutler, to the Chicago Bears for 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and Kyle Orton. Phenomenal mustache. Not a great player. But what does the franchise look like if either McDaniels doesn't trade him, or, we had talked about it because of the West Coast offense still being a pretty prominent in the NFL at that time. You get maybe some other offensive, you get Kubiak, or something, where it goes, where you get a different mind in here. What would it have looked like for the Broncos if Jay Cutler stays?
Well, McDaniels would have ruined it anyway. The guy is not meant to be a head coach. So regardless of whether those were dumb trades that he made. He ruined the team right away. But had he kept him, he's still going to fail, because he failed everywhere else he's went. He was not a head coach. Good offensive coordinator, terrible head coach. The decisions he makes, the locker room, he destroys the locker room. I mean, everything. So you still would have had probably the 1.5 years of McDaniels. Maybe he makes it 2 years and he's out. So that paves the way for a new coach. So you have Jay Cutler with a Shanny type system. Like you said, Gary Kubiak comes in right away. then you've got something, because the year before McDaniels took over, Mike Shanahan got an incredible offense going. Their defense was terrible. Their defense is what cost him his job, but that offense was one of the best. In fact, it might have been number 1 or number 2 in the league. I can't remember. He got a lot out of that offense with Jay Cutler and using his system. So Kubiak coming in with Jay Cutler still there, you're going to see a lot better team sooner. Obviously, you get Peyton Manning instead, and that changes everything. But the what if is McDaniel still ruins that team. He just does.
Yeah, I can't argue there. He's, what do they call him? Tornado Josh.
He's a bad leader. He can't lead. He can put X's and O's together, but that's the problem with head coaches. It's not about X's and O's. It's about putting the team together, putting a strategy, having everyone buy into that strategy, having an eye for talent, coaching talent, putting it all, having it come out on the field together. And he cannot do that. He'll never get another opportunity to be a head coach in the NFL again.
Yeah, nor should he. And then that 6-0 stretch, how much of that's fraudulent because he's recording practices. I mean, that's
the thing. It was Mike Nolan that put that stretch together. That 6-0 was the defense, not Josh McDaniels. And then he started meddling with the defense, and that's why Mike Nolan left after that first year, because he started telling Mike Nolan how to run the defense, and that's where it went to hell, because he couldn't help himself. He had to meddle with the defense, even though the defense is what was carrying that team.
Oh, Joshy Poo, you suck. All right. What if? You know what? I'm not going to say what if Peyton doesn't pick the Broncos, because we're not going to live in that world ever. What if Brock Osweiler stays?
My favorite topic, I guess. Not really. Brock Osweiler leaving was the first domino that created the mediocrity we saw until Sean Payton. Brock Osweiler leaving for Houston. If he'd have stayed, Gary Kubiak stays longer. They make the playoffs in 2016. They probably don't win the Super Bowl. They at least make the playoffs, keeps Gary Kubiak here longer until they actually find a better quarterback. Brock Osweiler was a good enough quarterback with that defense to get him to the playoffs and keep Kubiak at least another year while they explore opportunities for other quarterbacks. Because I think he'll realize that Brock Osweiler is not going to get him the Super Bowl. I think he'll realize that. But you don't get Paxton Lynch. You don't waste your draft pick on Paxton Lynch. You don't keep trying to go back and get these retread free agents like Flacco and all that. So all that mediocrity that we saw, the quarterback carousel, that doesn't happen if Brock Osweiler stays. They go to the playoffs at least in 2016 and maybe in 2017, but they don't win the Super Bowl until something changes.
Yeah.
Trevor Siemian, shout out. Still in the league.
Trevor wasn't the reason why they weren't good that, but it was the first domino, and like where I think John, as an executive, where he really like his britches got real big. It was Mark Sanchez, and then you think that that's a recipe for a defending Super Bowl champion, and the fact that they went 9-7, I think wasn't a hard enough fall to really like look at it in the mirror. And so, I agree. Then the retreads come, because it's like, if we just get a little bit better play, we have what it takes. So I'm still master negotiator and all those things. I think if Brock stays, maybe his ego stays in check, continuity stays in check, draft picks, like you said, stay in tow, and you at least get it's like Alex Smith run with Kansas City. You're like, wild card playoff teams all the time, pretty good regular season, maybe. But you keep Gary around, which as a lifelong Bronco fan, we came to Denver at the same time, me, Berth, and him from college. And so I just, the nostalgic parts of him and John Elway really until they were what I knew of Broncos quarterbacks. Like they were success for the Broncos for me. And I think a lot of us, I think that would have been a really cool continued thing. You know, it's like the Rooney family with their coaches a little bit. It was like, you got John and Gary, and they just keep taking us to the mountaintops and all the things. But we're gonna end on this one, Thomas, because we're hitting our hour. We've enjoyed having you, but I bet people are tired of listening to me. What if no actually one more what if, and then we'll do our last question. So what if the Broncos don't trade for Russell Wilson? So Russell says, nope, you know what? Because I think that there were 3 deals on the table, and he got a pick where he went. He doesn't come to Denver. What do you think is, where are the Broncos now, or where are they not?
I think they're still in the same spot, because I think Nathaniel Hackett, regardless of Russell Wilson, everyone knew he was not the answer. Nathaniel Hackett's just a bad head coach. So they move on to a new head coach. They're already getting a new ownership. So they probably want that. They probably go get Peyton or someone of that caliber. And they find a quarterback in the draft, whether that is Bo Nix or somebody before, I don't know, but I think it plays out very similarly, but they have more capital to work with in order to try and fill out a team sooner. I think maybe the success happens a year sooner rather than when it did.
Than a year later. I like that.
I wonder if Russell Wilson is as hated as he is now. Because
the question that I ask is, what if they get Russell Wilson but they don't get Nathaniel Hackett? If Russell comes with any other coach worth their salt, I wonder. I think, does Russ look significantly different? I mean, you remember the next year with Peyton. I mean, at least statistically, right? It was 3-1 touchdown to interception ratio. There were some really good stretches of football, mind you. I think we all kind of get it now, but like you said, Chris, he probably isn't hated as much because that first year doesn't go as bad. You have the special assistant, special teams coach come in and go 2-2 over the last 4 because he's just competent, a competent human being, which goes to show that they weren't maybe on paper like that bereft of talent, but it was such a bad coaching job. Then you elevate this leader who's just not grounded in reality, right? For all intents and purposes, good guy, good person. Just he lives somewhere else, kind of Tim Tebow-y, good dude, but just they have a different life than most of us. And if you get some competent coaching, maybe that isn't as bad, and maybe we don't get to Sean, maybe, or all those things. But I don't want to think about that. I think. The thing I do want to think about is the Mount Rushmore of Denver Broncos, as someone that we trust with the historical sphere. Who's your 4?
Well, Elway for sure. I mean, he's always going to be the number 1 Bronco unless something miraculous happens. He's number 1. Terrell Davis, you do not get those Super Bowls without Terrell Davis. So you can thank Terrell Davis for those Super Bowls, those 2 Super Bowls, first one. Then Champ Bailey is on there because he's arguably one of the best cornerbacks of all time. He had the best season, maybe the 2 best seasons of all time. He's on there, even though he didn't get a ring. He's just so good that he's on there. And then Pat Bowlen, just one of the best owners in sports. None of that happens without Pat Bowlen. So those are my 4 Mount Rushmore.
I like it. And I like that you went, you stepped off the field a little bit to get there. I do think Pat, and I think for the NFL and maybe even sports, I mean, Pat was first class within the building and was kind of one of the first owners and especially a team that hadn't been truly successful yet. They had 1 Super Bowl run, but it wasn't a team that really had that cachet. And he came in, and mind you, he didn't have oil money. He wasn't, every dollar that he had was going back into the Broncos, and everything was his first class. As he can make it, he really poured into the franchise, and was going to leave no stone unturned in helping that team turn around. Which I think I see quite a bit now in the Penners. Obviously, different resources available, but really, we're going to give you what you need to be successful, because we're here to win, and do so with some class and some integrity, and treat you all as people and players, and be relatable. And I think Pat was that for sure. So we really appreciate you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas.
We want you all to go
Thank
look
you.
Broncos Untold on YouTube. Follow Thomas on Twitter and all of the good stuff. Seeing snippets come out all the time. So any last words for folks, or maybe what's the next video you got coming?
Yeah. So the next video, it's gonna be a little bit newer. It kind of hit some of the older stuff, was back in the 60s, but now this is a story about what happens in the first Super Bowl victory. So there's a few stories that happened through those Super Bowls, but this one is about a specific player that you'll want to listen to.
Love it. Well, thank you again for Chris.
Thank you,
my co-host. We appreciate you. And Colorado sports community, we appreciate you. Go lick your wounds a bit for the Avalanche, and then go Rockies until training camp, and then go. But appreciate you all. If you need a script, let me know.
From football to hockey, we're taking it higher. Join the celebration, feel that sports desire. So grab your crew, let's hit the show. My high sports symposium, let the good times flow.